Good evening and welcome to Special Assignment. I'm your host, Ashraf Garda. Tonight we focus on the struggling community of Bethelsdorp in the Eastern Cape. The community claims to have been cheated out of its salt pan, which can be equated to millions of rands. In addition, they claim to have been cheated out of their land as well. Now, this community has a dual fight to recover lost revenue from the salt business and to reclaim its land. However, the people of Bethelsdorp only realized 10 years ago that they are shareholders in the salt business, which led them to finding out about their land ownership. They did not institute a claim before the land claim application process was closed in 1998. So, does this community have any hope of getting its land and shareholding rights back? Rochelle Seaton-Rogers was sent on special assignment.
A battle over land is raging in the historic town of Bethelsdorp, just outside of Port Elizabeth. On the land lie two valuable salt pans worth millions of rands. It was only 10 years ago that the community discovered that they and the church actually own the multi-million rand salt pans, which have been in operation for over a century. Yet most of the community remains impoverished. They believe that certain members of the church have robbed them of their rights. One man's taken it upon himself to lead the community's fight for what they claim are their land and salt rights.
I would say Bethelsdorp would have been the richest place in the Eastern Cape or in South Africa because of the salt. I mean the salt, you could see it's a huge operation. And the one salt pen in Bethelsdorp is one of the best in the world.
But the community's only had obstacles along the way. They're representative of a bigger problem in the country.
Hulle is besig om advantage te vat van ons. Het voel asof my reg ontneem is.
Bethelsdorp is a historic town stretching far back to the 1800s. It's one of the oldest settlements in the Eastern Cape.
It really was quite a turning point in the Eastern Cape history. The London Missionary Society in the late 1700s sent out Reverend van der Kemp, Theodore van der Kemp. He ended up in this part of the world, and he ultimately set up the mission station at Bethelsdorp in 1803. I suppose it was the start of that suburb, really, because it became a sanctuary for Khoi people in the area who were working on Boer farms, and a lot of them were being badly treated.
Some of the landmarks from that time still exist in Bethelsdorp today.
It would be the church. There's a slave bell out in the front of the church that was still used, and also the almshouses. I think the almshouses were established in the 1820s to house particularly indigent people.
But the community would soon discover that the quaint Van der Kemp Church, now known as the Bethelsdorp Congregational Church, would be at the centre of a salt and land controversy. Bethelsdorp is home to two salt pans which generate millions of rands in revenue. The salt's mined by Swartkorp Sea Salt, part of Marina Salt. The community has documents showing that they own the salt pans together with the church, but they say they've been cheated out of those rights by the same church. Aldred Lewis has volunteered to lead the battle for the rights of the people of Bethelsdorp. He's currently employed in the construction industry and is thankful for the job, considering how many people in the area are unemployed.
I used to do my own work, you see, for many years. But recently, the last 2 years, I'm working as a supervisor, you see, for a very good company. Very hard work, you see. Basically, it must be your blood. So it runs in my family, you see. My grandfather, my father, myself, my brothers, my cousins. I'm very happy as a family man, you know, being the breadwinner.
Aldred takes us back to the day the community was shocked to learn that they actually own the salt pans.
What happened in 2002, there was a meeting, a historical meeting held from the owners of the salt company, Marina Salt, you see. So I attended that meeting. And there we heard that we are the owners of the salt pan. And really, I was astonished. I was really surprised, you see. I mean, after all these years.
Although he was fortunate to make a decent life for himself in Bethelsdorp, he took up the fight after realizing the community had been kept in the dark for over 90 years.
As a businessman that time, I just thought there was no communication, there was no, letters, there's no consultation. You know what I mean? And that's where the research started.
Aldred's research into the matter began 10 years ago. He visited deeds offices, court archives and libraries to get his hands on documentation to build up his piles and piles of research. It was during this search that he says he also found evidence that over 6,000 hectares of land actually belonged to the Bethelsdorp community.
We were really amazed to the stipulations of that act. That act provided for granting of title in freehold to Bethelsdorp, and so this act, granted the land to the inhabitants of those places, where they became the legal owners.
Like many other communities in South Africa, despite the community owning the valuable resources, Bethelsdorp remains a poor community. We met another resident, Annie Gross, whose family's history is deeply rooted in Bethelsdorp. She says she's descendant from the Khoisan. She lives in one of the historic houses in the area.
200 jaar. Hoe lang bly ons dan nou hier? Ek is nou gaan nou in vir 68 en ek bly 68 years in Stuurmanstraat. My ma het 91 years in Stuurmanstraat gebly. My ouma het 102 geraak toe sy sterwe. En my hele familie kan jy sê het in Stuurmanstraat gebly. Ons almal het groot geword hier by hierdie rivier. Onze oom wat nou al gesterwe is, nou al jare al gesterwe, Omans. Sien jy? Omans was mos nou 'n Khoisan geweest.
Annie says the Heritage Council has told her that they are supposed to maintain the house because it's 200 years old, but its old roof is in bad condition and every time it rains, it gets flooded.
O, dat reën skrikkelik, mevrou. Ek sal waardeer as hulle vir my geld gee om die huis reg te maak, regtig. Want die huis is nou al jare wat ek nou van praat. En nou ons wil 'n ding doen, as hulle nee, moenie die huis regmaak nie. Ons gaan die huis kom regmaak. Hier kom hulle nou nog. Die huis reën nou eerder erger dan dit nou is.
Oswaldo Martin, Annie's adopted brother, says he remembers hearing about the fight for the salt pan rights when he was growing up.
I learned a deal about it because my granny used to tell me when I was smaller, when I could understand what she used to say to me. So I was like for about 5 years old. When I was 5 years old, she used to tell me about the salt pan rights and what money we supposed to have, what rights we supposed to have.
For Annie, it's frustrating that the battle for their rights has gone on for 10 years without any results.
Ons sal dit moet regkry. Ons sal moet nog 10 jaar fight. Want because ons moet dit regkry. Man kyk hoe swaar kry ons kry bitter swaar in Bethelsdorp.
Next up, we hear how the community took up the fight to get their rights back.
Aldred Lewis, the spokesperson for the community of Bethelsdorp, says they've already spent thousands on hiring lawyers to take up their fight for the salt and land rights. But he says halfway through the process, the lawyers disappear, and he believes they get paid off by people who don't want the matter resolved.
From day one up to now, we only had obstacles. Now I understand because why this thing is so big, you see, and why we can't come right. Because I mean, it's not anybody that can refuse money. Although maybe I'm your representative, and end of the day there's opposition, so we could just get nowhere.
In terms of the Bethelsdorp Settlement Act, a board was to be set up to control the salt pans and the land. It had to contain 3 representatives from the church community, 3 members from the community not involved with the church, and the chairperson of the board was to be the Port Elizabeth chief magistrate at the time.
the board, whom was supposed to represent us, you see, never consulted us, never had meetings with us. Even I, that was now 20 years in this church, I mean, our church does have procedures, but never in the meetings it was told to us that they are representing us on the control board.
Aldred says he has evidence that the Reverend Jacob Alberts from the Bethelsdorp Congregational Church has misrepresented the church and the community.
Certain leaders, whom I've got proof of, you see, signatures of them, you see, pretending as trustees of the time being of the Bethelsdorp Congregational Church. But we are the church, we know nothing of it. So which means, where did they get their mandate from? I'm sitting with documentations from Reverend Alberts, you see, where when he wants a certificate of a title from the deeds registries, then he applies to them as the owner of the land. But why he was involved with the land and involved with our trust fund, of which we do have proof, and why is he a director on 2 companies? Because he was a member of the control board. I mean, to us, it's a conflict of interest.
Special Assignment called Reverend Jacob Alberts to put these allegations to him. He told us that everything he had done had been by the instruction of the church. He said we needed to contact the church if we wanted to interview him. After a few weeks and several calls to the church, we were finally given an answer about the interview.
According to the deacons, we have to wait until a deacon's meeting, a general meeting, that I can put everything in order for this special assignment.
Can they not call an urgent meeting?
But unfortunately, I can't do anything without that meeting.
Because as it stands, the program is going to go ahead on the 15th of November with certain allegations made against one of the reverends of the church. And he says that everything that he's done with the permission of the church. So those allegations therefore also fall on the church.
Now that's right what he told you.
Okay.
He told you that everything he did was in black and white.
Yes.
He asked the church to do that. And the church said yes.
Does this mean the entire church is allegedly implicated in taking away the salt and land rights of the community? Swartkorp Sea Salt, part of Marina Salt, is the company leasing the salt pans in Bethelsdorp. They produce some of these products as seen on their website. Special Assignment requested an interview with the company's Dani Skumbi, who declined, saying he didn't want to get involved. The community's outraged that they can't get the matter resolved, and they often have meetings to discuss the way forward. They say they're sick of living in poor conditions and they want what's rightfully theirs. Just down the road from Annie Gross lives Andrew Amsterdam, who was also born in Bethelsdorp. He lives in a very old stone house with his wife Heidi and 6 children. It's a 1-bedroom house and they have made a makeshift 2nd bedroom.
He's unemployed at the moment and I'm also unemployed, and and we did we're going day by day from he's doing works like radios, he's putting and alarms and that, but he's working from home. So when the money comes in, we have to buy food, we have to buy electricity, and it's a struggle sometimes. The past few days it was raining, so he didn't have jobs.
Their old house, which they don't have the means to maintain, also gets flooded when it rains.
When it rains, then it's wet there in the room. It's very cold, especially in the morning for my children to get up to go to school, because the floor is very cold. And in winter you can especially feel it. And when she gets sick because of the cold and the walls, that is wet.
The community says it doesn't know what the company makes every year because they don't have access to records. According to them, they receive as little as between 300 and 800 rand once a year, and this is explained as dividend payments since they are shareholders.
Die het ek by my pa gekry, die grond, né? En ek het uitgevind van die wat hulle sê, die soutpangoede. Nee, en hy het my ook ge-explain dat jy kry 1 keer 'n jaar 'n checkie en dat beteken niks nie.
One of their main gripes is that despite the fact that they own the salt pans, people from the community aren't employed to work there. But on its website, the company claims to be employing people from within the community.
They employ other people. I mean, they should have contacted the family members and say, is there somebody unemployed? There's opportunity for you to come and work.
Hulle is besig om advantage te vat van ons.
How does that make you feel?
Ja, baie teleurgestel.
What would you like to see come from all of this?
Ek sal as hulle ons kan employ op die dinge se, of as hulle ons meer geld kan gee. Dan kan ek mos baie dinge doen. Maar op die oomblik kan ek niks doen nie. Want die geld is nie reg nie. Het voel asof my reg ontneem is.
But is the community of Bethelsdorp fighting a losing battle? We'll tackle that issue in a moment.
The community of Bethelsdorp has been fighting to get back what they say are their land and salt rights for 10 years. They've accused some members of the Bethelsdorp Congregational Church of robbing them of these rights. Aldred Lewis says Bethelsdorp would be a different town if they were given the proper compensation.
I would say Bethelsdorp would have been the richest place in the Eastern Cape or in South Africa because of the salt. I mean, the salt, you could see it's a huge operation. And the one salt pen in Bethelsdorp is one of the best in the world.
Most of the land in Bethelsdorp is now held by the municipality. The communities accused them of obtaining the land illegally. We put these allegations to them.
I think the community interpret that act as having given all the land in Bethelsdorp to the community at large. And that is not really the way that the act reads. So the land, as we see it, has never really been intended for ownership by the Bethelsdorp community at large. It's not a question that the municipality has just taken land or stolen land, as is sometimes alleged.
So how did the municipality obtain the land?
There was not necessarily a title over the land in the name of the state, but in the early days there was a lot of vacant land that just vested in the state. And I think the acts also refer to that. So the property would have been transferred or registered for the first time into the municipality's name in the early 1960s.
But Eldred's convinced that the land was given back to the community.
In 1966, the Bethelsdorp Settlement Act, the land was granted back to the control board, you see, and the land ceased to apply to the local authority.
The Bethelsdorp issue is a microcosm of the serious problems relating to land facing many South African communities. This community's even approached the President's Office, the Department of Minerals and Energy, and the Land Commission, but they've been told that they missed the deadline for land claims in 1998. We approached the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform on the sidelines of a land conference about the issues.
When it comes to restitution, they've got no case because they did not submit their claim within the prescribed period, which is between 1995 and the 31st of December 1998. So the department cannot help them there because we've got to follow the prescripts of the law.
Andile Mkritama is a land rights expert who's very critical of the land reform process in the country. He believes it's failed the people because, among others, only 8% of a 30% target for 2014 has been successful.
Restitution says you have only land rights if you have been dispossessed now after 1913. Restitution fails to understand, as it is now designed, that the land dispossession process started in 1652 with the arrival of white people in this country. That's how far it should have gone.
But the department denies that land reform has failed.
No, not at all. We have not failed. We are making progress, just albeit that it is slow. Because there are many things. Remember, the wills, legal wills, are very slow to grind around.
The department says that as of March this year, they've restored 2.8 million hectares to over 1 million people. But Mqitana is not convinced.
Today, you look at the statistics from the Restitution Commission or from government. It says that more than 90% of that process has been resolved. Now, this is a bit crazy because in the past 18 years, we know that only 7% has been returned to black people.
Meanwhile, Aldred and the community say they'll turn to the courts to fight their battle if they have to. Mqitana doesn't think the community's case is hopeful.
I think they will lose in the land claims court, and then they will have to go to a high court, and then they can go up to constitutional court. But the laws that determine questions of land are not going to allow them much space. They were going to waste too much money.
But there may be hope for the community and many other South Africans if a proposal to reopen the land claims process currently before Parliament is successful.
More than 3,000 people have approached the minister requesting that the land claim process be reopened. And now that the request has been taken, it has been forwarded to Cabinet for a decision.
But even if this doesn't happen, the community says they're determined to continue fighting for their land and salt rights, regardless of how long it takes.
I don't mind even if it's not in my lifetime, but I will fight as long as I've got breath and strength.
And the battle, it seems, will not die with this generation.
The young generation, they care a lot about it because as I've seen already that my grandmother passed away now. That has been my mother to me for all my years of my life. And she's also getting old now. So that means that I have to carry it on if she passes away now because she's the last one here to me. She'll be proud one day if this fight's over, that we're still fighting.
Now to your comments. Do you think the land claim process should be reopened to afford communities such as Bethelsdorp another opportunity to make their claim? Well, if you're tweeting, use the hashtag special assignment, but you can also Facebook or email us and do join the follow-up discussion on my radio show. That's on SAFM at 2:30 p.m. on Friday. Finally, I've picked out contrasting comments from the input we received from you on our show on seal clubbing. Shelley Smith tweeted saying, "We should all be enraged at this brutal, horrific practice and petition Namibia to end it." While Tracy van Boom Facebooked saying, "I'm from Namibia and I do believe it's necessary to kill the seals as they're more than our population itself. But I think they should find a better way to get rid of them." Well, that's it from me. Join us again next week when we point out the issues that matter.